Welcome back. Now we answer questions we've received from viewers. If you have a question, visit our website, QuranSpeaks.com. Dr. Shabir, the question is, I'm a practicing Muslim and I want to get married, but my parents are more concerned with culture than religion. Do you have advice for how to balance respecting my parents while still choosing someone based on deen? That's a question a lot of young people have these days.
Exactly. And, in response to that, Safia, I need to offer advice not only to the young people who are asking, but also to parents, hoping that they're watching our show and they might also reflect on some of what we need to say. So here, this is being caught between a rock and a hard place, right? You have desires to marry a particular person or a type of person, and your parents want to force fit you into marrying, somebody of their choosing or a type of person of their choosing. So they have a conception of who would be the right person for you, and they want you to comply with that. And the Islamic teachings are very strong on being good to your parents, but of course everything has to be done in moderation and with balance. And there is a limit to how much authority parents should be able to exercise over their children. And now, traditions do not help in this regard because there are traditions which might indicate that parents have this kind of ultimate authority. But what I've noticed in our modern context is that scholars generally rule in disregard of those traditions which give such ultimate power to parents. And scholars generally say nowadays that the youth have the free choice to marry persons of their own choosing. Now, of course, they differentiate between men and women. They say that young men could marry on their own without their parents' consent, but women would need to be handed off by their wali or their guardian, who in most cases would be their father, and in the absence of the father, their grandfather, in the absence of the grandfather, to then some other close male relative, perhaps a brother or something. All of this needs to be discussed further. Let me start with this last item. In the case of women, a lot of our tradition has been shaped and our laws have been drawn out at a time when society was structured quite differently. Women were quite sheltered, and perhaps some women needed that sheltering and protection from their male relatives. Women were not so much into the business world, and in terms of conducting transactions, whether of a sale of a property or conducting their own marriage, so they had a wakil or a representative do that on their behalf. So the marriage was done on behalf of the woman by the woman's representative, who often was her father, and it was presumed that the girl's father would have her best interest in mind. Now, we would presume today that the girl would have her own best interest in mind and perhaps understand her interests better than the father. But this is a presumption that has hardly taken root among the modern scholarship. And but we do find reprieve in classical scholarship in that one of the four major schools of Islamic jurisprudence, in fact, the one which had become most widespread, the Hanafi school, has the opinion that a woman can actually conduct her own marriage. She does not really need the wali or the guardian to send her off in marriage. And how do they then deal with the traditions which say that there is no marriage without a guardian? Well, they say, on the one hand, those hadiths are not in the most authentic sources. And there is some question about the authenticity of those hadiths. But even if we grant that they're authentic, we need to meld that with other indications that a woman does have the right to marry herself off. And in the Hanafi school, Quranic indications are stronger than hadith indications. So something is indicated in the Quran, something contrary is indicated in the hadith. The hadith has to be subsumed under the Quran, not the other way around. You don't bend the Quran to fit into the hadith, but you can think of the hadith in a modified way to be governed by the Quran. So they cite passages in the Quran, for example, in Surah Al-Baqarah, where a divorcee is spoken of, and it says, You should not put any obstacle in her way if she wants to marry her previous husband. So it shows that she has the choice. She wants to marry her previous husband. Nobody should put any obstacle in her way. Another verse says that after the death of a man, the widow of that man would have the waiting period. And after that period is over, then, nobody has any concern as to, how she disposes of herself after that, which means that she might decide to get married, and it's of nobody's concern, like, whom she decides and when she decides to get married. For the Hanafis, this is a very strong proof from the Quran itself that women have this kind of authority over themselves. With that in mind, they would say, okay, those hadiths may refer to minors who naturally would be under their parents, and they would not have this, where they go to school and whom they're going to marry and so on. Now, we can see that the protectionism of the past might still be useful in some contexts in our present times. Even in a non-Muslim context, sometimes people are concerned about their youth going off to join a cult and getting married to the cult leader, let's say, for example, or, somebody going off and getting married to, a terrorist or something like this. So we might want to cut back on that and take the case to, a judge to say, well, this has got to be annulled. Somebody has been tricked into a situation that is not beneficial to them, actually harmful for them. And we as parents or, concerned individuals, we want to make sure that the best comes out of this for this person. And then it'll be a toss-up as to how much, the court wants to exercise authority over the person, given their free choice to get married and so on. Certainly to marry a terrorist, this would be illegal, or, to support terrorism on the whole. But, so these are the interplays between various levels of authority. Now, coming back to parental authority, parents have to recognize that, it's not their marriage. It's not they that will have to live with the person, for decades to come. It's the youth's own life, and we have to give them a chance to marry persons who they find suitable. It'll be their choice to live with, and whether good or bad, it'll be their choice, and they will know that, and they will have to own up to their own obligations and responsibilities following from their choices.
So, Dr. Shabir, given all that you've said, how would a person who wants to marry somebody that their parents disagree with, how would they go about this situation in a respectful manner?
Yeah, so, Sophia, it's not easy because some parents are not prepared to listen. And so
I'm sure you've had a lot of experience with this yourself.
Yes,
I'm sure you've negotiated between parents and children.
Yes. Youth come to us complaining of their parents' stubbornness, and the parents come to us complaining of the youth's insistence on wanting to marry particular persons of their choice. So we try to explain to both parties. So on the one hand, we try to explain to parents, look, you have to give the youth some slack here. I know you're concerned about them. You want the best for them. That's what you've done all your lives. You've been caring for them and protecting them. Now they've got wings. They've got to fly, right? And they've got to take responsibility for their own choices, and you cannot make those choices for them. The choice of a marriage partner like this is a very, a personal choice. It has to be left to the person. Now, of course, the parents are thinking in terms of decades ago when they themselves got married, and perhaps they themselves did not have a choice in the matter. And they may reflect on their own marriage. Perhaps their marriages were arranged, and they're living happily ever after. They have no regrets, and they're thinking, well, why don't we do the same for our children, right? Because our parents did that for us. We have to do that for our children. So, their concern is coming from a good place. We respect that. But it's overprotectiveness and overprotectionism in a context in which it does not fit. You see, in a different context where that's what everybody is doing, it's like nobody having a telephone and nobody seems to need one. But the moment one person gets one, then another person, and then it reaches a threshold until, somebody's thinking, well, everybody's got a telephone. Why don't I have a telephone? Right? So if we've reached a threshold where in our society, people are getting married of their own choices. So for parents to step in, this is like a square peg in a round hole. It's not fitting in this circumstance. So we got to give the youth some slack here. Now, on the other hand, youth have to also recognize, yes, our parents do have our good futures in mind, and they want to ensure the best for us, and they've got a lot more experience than us. Sometimes we may fall in love for the wrong reasons. We may have a crush on a person, and it's not going to be beneficial for us in the future. The person who is like emotionally involved is not the one to be analytical about his or her circumstances and about future prospects. So it's good to have like an outside mentor. If it's not parents, then somebody else who will look at this like from an analytical point of view and say, okay, I know you love the person, but think about this and that and that. With that, how would you manage all of these different things in the future? But the parents will be the best persons to help you in this because, of all of the people in the world, the parents are the ones who are most concerned with your well-being, right? If you're successful in life, there's only one person who will not be, two persons who will not be jealous of you. Those are your parents, right? They'll be proud of your success, and other people might be jealous of you, like, why you, not me, right, with that success. So, let the parents have some input and take their advice seriously and talk to them in a way that the Quran prescribes, that we're to speak to them with love and mercy and kindness and with rahmah, the Quranic word. And we cannot forget birrul walidain. But it's also, which means kindness towards parents. But there's also a practical consideration, Safiya. More than one practical considerations. And anything, like you don't want to burn bridges behind you, and you don't want to slam the door behind you as you're leaving, if you're leaving a situation. So you could be saying, okay, Mom and Dad, I did decide to do this, and I really must do this because I love this other person so much. I don't see that I can, do anything else but marry this person. Let me go and let me be able to do this. But you don't slam the door behind you. You don't burn the bridges. Now, eventually, you're going to have children, God willing, and you're going to want to bring the children and show your parents, look, these are, your grandchildren. So you want them to be in good terms with you. And even if they were in bad terms previously, they'll come around, right? But there's nothing...
Have you seen parents come around in these circumstances?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. And of course, there's nothing parents love more than grandchildren, right?
Yes.
But we don't want it to drag on, and because sometimes wounds can take time to heal. Don't burn the bridges and keep the conversation going and be respectful. And so one thing you can do is to get like a religious leader to come into the family situation and have a discussion with your parents to let them know whose rights are what in this circumstance, and maybe the parents will come to realize, it's coming from a religious authority, that we don't really have the right to intervene here. Let our children go and marry of their choice. So that's one thing that can be done. And the rest, of course, is to make dua to Allah Azza wa Jal, ask Him for His blessings and His guidance, and for Him to bring the hearts together and make it so that everyone is on the same page with moving ahead.
All right. Thank you for that great practical advice, Dr. Shabir.
You're welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Muslim Media Hub, the new home of Let the Quran Speak.
Here we spread positivity and good. We help people experience the beauty of Islam and help them appreciate and understand Muslims.
This beautiful building we purchased at cost $2.3 million.
Yeah, we've already raised a third of that money, and with your help, inshallah, we can pay off the rest.
So we're looking for people who can give $1,000 each. If you can be part of the select group, that's amazing.
Otherwise, just please give whatever you can. Every dollar counts.
It's our collective responsibility to share the message of Islam with our fellow human beings. Please help us continue this good work.
It's a sadaqah jariyah, something that will continue to be a benefit to the Muslim community long after Safiya and I are gone.
Please support our work at muslimmediahub.com.
Your support is zakat eligible and tax deductible.
May Allah bless you and your loved ones today and always. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.